Today is Monday, December the 30th, 2024, and my question today is, who other than God knows that you are having problems and may even need a miracle, and who, if anyone, is helping you and how? In this particular video, I would like to address the information I've been able to gather since I posted this challenge for exposure of central casting.
You know, there are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East. You know that, right?
Witch hunting is a term that I have taken directly from Donald Trump's own catalog of common phrases, as he's often accused the media and even the courts of doing around attempts to hold him accountable for the things that are clearly evident he is guilty of. So in this particular post, I'm sharing quotes from an article from 2019 where Donald Trump himself is talking about central casting. To gain a full understanding of this discussion around the apostolic archives at the Vatican, I want to share with you this particular post where I share the Fountain of the Pine Cone, which is located in the Vatican City courtyard, where the museums of the Vatican are located. All right, if you never researched the Vatican, its museums and court, then I would encourage you to do so. The imagery and idolatry contained within them can be quite disturbing. This is one of the central pieces in the courtyard. When you look at the fountain, what do you see? What is your opinion about what the individual sculptures depict, which comprise the entire fountain? How are these pieces positioned? What are they doing? And how do all the parts interact with each other to complete the sculpture as one artistic piece? The Fontana della Pigna, or simply Pigna, which also means pine cone, is a former Roman fountain which now decorates a vast niche in the wall of the Vatican facing the Cortile della Pigna, located in Vatican City in Rome, Italy. The Vatican City is a city-state surrounded by Rome, Italy. It's headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church. It's home to the Pope and a trove of iconic art and architecture. Its Vatican museums house ancient Roman sculptures such as the famed Laocoon and his sons, as well as Renaissance frescoes in the Raphael rooms and the Sistine Chapel, famous for Michelangelo's ceiling. Then I note the pine cone is often used as a symbol for the pineal gland in the brain. And I got the definition of the Latin word pinea for pine cone in reference to the gland's similar shape, which was first used in the late 17th century. Then I also share the pineal gland is the place where the mind and the brain intersect. It is the translator for these aspects of beingness, which sits at the separation between the tangible world and the mind of the person experiencing it. The brain is physical. The mind is spiritual. And then I give some other videos to watch to gain some additional clarity for yourself on how to interpret art and the messages within art, which very often have other kinds of messages that can be used to witch hunt. In an earlier post, I shared these particular symbols, and I state, these are the symbols used by the medical community to represent themselves. When you look at these symbols, what do you see? What are the parts of the symbol? What do you think they each represent? What are the symbols doing, and how do they interact with each other? What is happening? Describe it yourself. Then I ask, what then, in your opinion, might the symbol as a whole represent? If the symbol represents a goal or objective as a profession, what might that be? What is the message here? This is what is taught about these symbols. The caduceus is a staff with two snakes wrapped around it and is a symbol of peace, commerce, and medicine. The caduceus is used as a medical symbol, but it is often confused with the rod of Asclepius, which is a symbol of medicine with a single snake. The caduceus is the official insignia of the United States Medical Corps, Navy Pharmacy Division, and Public Health Service. And then I provide some additional information to consider. To make some inferences or come to some conclusions for yourself about what the symbols may mean. So the challenge today is understanding central casting at a local level in the ways I have tried to describe it in previous videos. Let's start with this clip from the 700 Club, followed by a clip from the video Prosperity and Protection Changing the Way You Think. As you watch the clip, ask yourself, how much does God need you to pledge in order to respond to the problems and crises you may be experiencing in your life?
As CBN celebrates its 50th anniversary, the CBN Prayer Center celebrates over 87 million calls, and it started in the 60s with a few volunteers taking donations to support CBN.
People who were taking pledges began to take prayer requests and began to pray for people. So from that, it was a natural evolution. Initially, we had people who were volunteers who answered phones. Now we have a full-time staff. That's their ministry, and it's a great ministry.
The Prayer Center is the engine of CBN. It's literally the thing that drives everything we do. When the prayer staff get together and pray for people, literally you can feel it when you walk into where they are, the blessing that's coming from their prayers.
The Prayer Center takes 11,000 calls a day, each staff member praying for needs, celebrating answers to prayer, and leading a total of 3 million people to Jesus Christ.
We offer digital media from CBN Resources. About 1 in 3 of our calls ends up in the delivery of a link, a video story of healing, or a PDF document, or something that empowers that person to receive more of the gospel.
People like Manny, who was addicted to pornography and alcohol when he saw the number on the 700 Club.
I knew I needed to know the Lord. I knew. So I picked up the phone and I dialed the number. This woman told me, it doesn't matter what you've done. Jesus wants to forgive you.
I know that the Lord is using me to reach those lives that really need help in this time. This is a crucial time in this world.
And reaching people for Jesus Christ is what the CBN Prayer Center does best.
We're seeing people heal, we're seeing people saved, we're seeing financial miracles happen, we're seeing families get back together again, we're seeing children turn and come to the Lord, and it's all because of the prayer.
From skilled volunteers who were able to collect pledges by praying to paid staff who use, quote, digital media from CBN Resources. What resources are those and where do they come from? There are people who are born into occult cultures who know no other teaching. My question is, what would attract someone who had been exposed to other teachings to join and be actively involved in a cult? And if you are a witch hunter, how you distinguish the difference between the two. She got up first, and then she did wake. I was partially awake, but then I did finally wake up. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'll get up, but, let's just kind of pace ourselves and not, I don't want to have to feel rushed or anything. And she was like, well, you said that we had to get up and go before noon. And I said, I did not say we have to go before noon. I said, we need to try to be out and about by noon because the demons come out after noon, and the demons come out after noon because they're up all night. And but I said Sunday is different. It's Saturday. It's usually Monday through Saturday that they're out all over the place from noon until midnight, somewhere around there. I said, but on Sundays, it's kind of like a day off because they're all in church. And I really meant that. I said, they're all in church because that's where the fresh meat is. People who are not churched are not open to what is the word? Artificial spiritual experiences. So because they'll dismiss anything that is out of the ordinary and try to figure out what it is, if it's irritating them or just like, whatever. But people who are churched are open to artificial spiritual woo-woo fake supernatural type experiences because of how religion functions and what religion requires you to believe. And so if you are in the church on Sunday, anybody who comes in that's new is probably going through something and is ripe for a miracle. So if you give someone who is ripe for a miracle relief from their suffering, because the system has the capacity to to impose suffering in every way. And so the system therefore also has the capacity to relieve any suffering that has been imposed through remedies or through, someone showing up and offering you a job or, whatever have you. And then you create in that person a allegiance to the church because they have a testimony. They can say, I went to church and I prayed and, whatever. And then this thing that I was having a problem with went away, or something happened, or I got money, or I got a new job, or my child got better, or whatever it was. And then once they are that embedded, they will fight for the church. They will not allow anyone who does not believe the way they do to force them to surrender any nonsensical thinking for reality, because they were blessed, so to speak, in a miraculous way that only occurred after they became churched. So, so I explained all that to her, and I said, that is why you don't have to worry about it. They are in every commercial center during the week afternoon, between noon and, the time stores close, and then they go home and then they start, doing all this, all of the other stuff and passing on the information and all that kind of stuff. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because when she was younger, it was important, based on her level of understanding, that I preserve her sense of her capacity to have a choice. But I had to still be in control of the kinds of choices that were available to her, because having too much exposure would have made it too challenging for her to come to a decision that would not only be beneficial for her, but that would be acceptable to me as her mother. So when you think about how our elections are designed and the choices that we have, a lot of times people get frustrated because they don't like either of the choices, but they feel like that's the only choice they have. And this is another reason why I have pressed so much about localized governance, because in a localized governing situation, people have lots of choice. And not only do they have choice, if they find that the choices they made are not working, they're in a much better position to make changes to ensure that everyone's needs are being met at all times. So with that being said, I just want to share some things with you to contemplate so that you can understand why I have this prophet of doom apocalyptic malaise sort of hovering around me right now. Each individual person uses their individual voice to do the things that are necessary to ensure all of us are safe, healthy, and happy in our own homes, in our own families, and in our own communities.
There are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East. You know that, right?
From skilled volunteers who were able to collect pledges by praying, to paid staff who use, quote, digital media from CBN resources. What resources are those, and where do they come from? Another important question is who provides training and supervision to these counselors? What would be the method of accountability for a person being paid as a counselor for people with problems they are unable to solve for themselves? Hope that God will help them by following any advice or suggestions given to them by the person they speak to on the phone or who provides this digital information. Who is liable for harm or injury in the same way licensed mental health professionals, counselors, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, would be for malpractice if they cannot demonstrate competence in the help they have provided and someone is hurt or dies as a result?
This was a recorded show, by the way. It was recorded. And somebody was watching it, and I said, it's the right knee, and the person who was watching said, no, dummy, it's the left knee. And I stopped and said, no, it's the left knee. Now, this was mine was on tape, and they were live.
Wow.
And God healed their knee.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And you know, very often we've even had that odd situation where someone is watching the show and a word is given and they know of someone else who has that
yes.
malady, they claim it for them and God heals the other person.
You can't limit God, so don't try to. So just enjoy it. But there's a continuum always, and we've had weeks delay, months delay, different languages and so forth. You know.
Yeah.
Anyhow, go ahead.
Okay, this is from Sharon, who says, my elderly sister is mentally incompetent and my adult daughter has custody of her and her assets. Unfortunately, she's been ignoring my sister and spending the money on herself. I would like to get custody of my sister, but I dread taking my daughter to court. Are there times when legal battles are the best solution?
Sometimes they're the only solution. You have courts for just this very reason. If somebody is misusing a trust, and that's what it amounts to, they have to be called into account. Sometimes they're the only solution. You have courts for just this very reason. If somebody is misusing a trust, and that's what it amounts to, they have to be called into account. And it's nothing unchristian to bring somebody. I mean, your sister is stealing money. That's what it amounts to.
It's her daughter who's stealing her
excuse
sister's
me,
money.
her daughter.
Yeah.
Her daughter is stealing the money belonging to her mentally impaired sister. And you have to stand in the way of helping the infirm and the needy and the helpless.
You might want to try talking it out with her before you do the legal route, don't you think?
Well, you can talk it out, but if she'll say, I'm not doing it, and she'll downface you. But, I mean, of course, you go to that first, yeah.
Okay, this is Norma, who says, my 17-year-old daughter wants to drop out of school, and she doesn't want to listen anymore. She goes out with her friends after school and comes home late. She also stays out all weekend, and I can't stop her. The school counselor said to let her do whatever she wants. Do you think I should tell her to find her own place if she doesn't want to follow my rules?
Well, you could do one thing. You could, again, call on the court system. I'm sure your state, it depends on the state as to whether a minor is emancipated, but 17, you could say, look, she's incorrigible. And I asked the police to come and pick her up and incarcerate her. You know, the kid needs so-called tough love. You can't let her do what she wants to do. You're ruining her, allowing her to do that.
It's pretty hard at 17, you know, to tell a child that they can or can't do something when they simply do it anyway. Do you think she should tell her to get her own place?
Well, you know that'll kick her down the line. Of course, she didn't have any money or anything, so the next thing you know, she'll be out hustling on the street or selling drugs or, you know, doing tricks, and you don't want to condemn her. The one thing you could do is bring in the legal.
Let me speak to an attorney and find out what your choices might be.
I think it depends on the state. You know, we have 50 states, and the jurisdictions are different. So this isn't a national law, but it does seem like to me a child is incorrigible. That's what it amounts to. You can have restraints put on her, including putting her in jail. And you know, she needs a shock. Yeah, but the last thing in the world is let her do her thing. Good grief.
Yeah.
All right.
This is Naomi, who says, Pat, I know I should read the Bible every day, but I have poor eyesight. Reading often seems like more trouble than it's worth. What does reading the Bible really do for someone anyway? And if you can't see, what can you do?
Thy word is a light, a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. By your word is your servant warned. In keeping of your commandments, that great peace have they that love thy law. You can go on and on and on. To have peace of mind, to have knowledge of what God wants, to be led by the Lord, on and on and on. Things that are just a complete blessing. You need to hide the word in your heart that you might not sin against the Lord. So you need to know what the word is. So you've got poor eyesight. Why don't you get one of those audio Bibles? They have them available, and you can play the audio, and it's, you know, so you don't read it, you hear it. It's the same thing. That's the way it used to be in the old days. They heard, they couldn't read, so the people in the services read the word to them.
That's all the time we've got for today.
Thank you for those questions. God bless you.
This is a message for people with a strong aversion to the word no, unless they are using it. Can I ask a mature question of people willing to indulge me around the genie God? This would be the God who watches you constantly no matter where you are to judge whether you are naughty or nice, worthy, and is then also on call 24/7 for every crisis you are in that probably could have been avoided if you were self-accountable and mature enough to learn how to do things for yourself rather than rely on other people and God to take care of it for you. He is also known by other names such as Santa Claus, the Hymn God, or other archetypes of false benevolence. He doesn't always show up for your crisis calls, however, unless not doing so affects critical production for profits. He has a life beyond your wishful indulgences and can't be interrupted to deal with your problems consistently. It's usually a real person you end up forced to reach out to who actually cares about what happens to you who shows up instead. Anyway, I read a post this morning that included a photo from the perspective of a bedroom security or sleeping cam about being specific in your request from God. The original poster's request had been for a male companion. She shared that she ended up with a male cat, to which a commenter shared their alternate fulfillment experiences, which may have been good for them, but was perceived as a mean sense of humor. So my question is your God willing to hear prayers, requests, or wishes from you for things your parents will not give you, regardless of your age at this point? Whether you have good, mature, and wise parents, or underdeveloped, immature, and or toxic parents, why would this be a problem either way? I'll wait. And I did receive some answers. Let me share with you another clip. Let's look at the CBN write-up for answering the call to be a 700 Club prayer counselor. A woman just lost her son in a car accident and has nowhere to turn. In her desperate attempt to grasp at anything that could fill the emptiness inside, she dials the 700 Club. Hundreds of phones are ringing in the prayer counseling center, but this woman's call is routed to prayer counselor Lily Beth Taylor. Taylor is familiar with the pain of a grieving mother. It was several years prior that she and her 12-year-old daughter were in a fatal car accident. Taylor sustained injuries that left her in a coma for 3 days, and her daughter never made it out of the wreck. I know how you feel, is this prayer counselor's repeated response to many of the callers she comforts. When I tell them that, I can sense the spirit of despair lifting from them. You must have the calling to do this job, Taylor says in hindsight. She journeyed through the emotions of denial, anger, and intense sorrow associated with her own daughter's death. She too wrestled with suicidal thoughts because of the grief. Yet this all turned around when Taylor accepted Jesus Christ as her Savior. She began to fervently seek God for healing and remember a specific instance in which God met her. I was driving one day and crying, and I asked God to use me as his counselor, Taylor remembers. Then I felt an amazing peace come over me. Months later, she was looking for a job, and a neighbor spoke to her about the Christian Broadcasting Network. Let me repeat that. Months later, she was looking for a job, and a neighbor spoke to her about the Christian Broadcasting Network. I was flipping through CBN's list of jobs, and when I saw counselor, I was shocked. I took a written test on the Bible and was hired to work on September 10, 2001. During her first week of work, Taylor was inundated with callers affected by the tragedies of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. She knew exactly how to console them. I told them it's all right to grieve. It's part of the healing process. Many prayer counselors agree that it is common to receive calls that are divinely orchestrated. Staffing director of the Virginia Beach Prayer Counseling Center, Desiree Miller, has heard of countless reports like this, not just with inbound calls, but with outbound calls as well. You will hear that someone was just praying, God, give me a sign, and then someone on our team will call them. Tracy Swagger leads 150 prayer counselors at the center in Nashville, Tennessee. Both directors suggest that the prayer counselors' calling far surpassed their 20-hour-a-week shifts. It's a way of life for them, Miller says. Prayer counselors share common values. They love God, love people, love to pray, and love to make a difference. The Nashville and Virginia Beach prayer counseling centers are an army of over 350 prayer counselors. Their ranks include school teachers, single mothers, pastors, former chaplains, students, and bilingual speakers. Working around the clock, this team processes on average 11,000 inbound and 2,000 outbound calls a day. Their combined effort was 5 million phone contacts just last year. Prayer counselors are essentially the first responders when the 700 Club is broadcast. They offer prayer, scriptural guidance, and often invite callers to become CBN partners. If a person is interested in a topic or guest on the 700 Club, prayer counselors also provide ministry content and other helps. Miller says that most callers are interested in receiving prayer. Other inquiries include topics on finances, family issues, salvation, and healing. Prayer counselors get to see God at work firsthand. It's exciting to see that miracles are for today. 700 Club viewers often call in response to Pat or Gordon Roberts' ministry segment in the broadcast. Prayer counselors like Anna Maria Haskell are the first to witness these testimonies of healings. This woman called, said she claimed Pat's word that someone in a wheelchair was being healed. She felt a surge through her body, recalled Haskell. The disabled woman announced that she stood up and began to run around her living room. I could tell from the joy in her voice that she was healed, said Haskell. The same miracle reports are flooding the center in Nashville, Tennessee, according to Tracy Swagger. There is no distance in prayer. We're joined with the caller and the 700 Club before God. The 150 counselors on staff in Nashville are a dynamic part of CBN's vision for global impact. Swagger believes our prayer counselors are constantly growing in their faith. There are very few jobs in the marketplace that can have such an effect on our world as we see in the miracles here. There are stories every day. People are throwing away their crutches, standing out of their wheelchairs. Now let's look at the job requirements for a prayer counselor from a remote location. What type of skills would you expect a counselor to have who receives calls of the nature discussed in the article published by CBN, calling on people to accept a call as prayer counselors for their prayer line ministry? Do these qualifications meet the expectations you have for someone to be qualified for this type of role? Now let's look at some other interesting job openings, such as Distribution Center Supervisor in Chesapeake for Operation Blessing. As you can see here, they are also looking for a Remote Contact Center CX or Customer Experience Analyst. At the top here, you can see that this role is designed to ensure alignment between customer and employee satisfaction by identifying insights that drive both meaningful customer experiences and workforce engagement. Is this a position you would expect be needed in a center that is being run and overseen by God? Here are some additional open positions that I found interesting and decided to share for your review. And here is some additional information from their listings page. Adoption support. When people say rest in peace, what is it they are saying exactly? What would that even look like? Because I've been trying to rest for years, and I can't find a single consistent hour of peace no matter where I am or what I am doing. What is it a person is supposed to have rest from when someone makes that statement about another person? Do people ever say this to anyone directly, like, have a nice day? It reminds me of the statement, you should be grateful because there are people worse off than you are. Why can't I want better for them and me? How could I ever hope to even help them if my approach to the problems is to accept my own unhappiness and suffering as acceptable because it could be worse? There's a difference between being ungrateful when an effort is made to relieve you of feelings of unhappiness or suffering and you aren't appreciative, than to feel no sense of graciousness because your life and circumstances are unhealthy and oppressive. These two states of being ingracious are not interchangeable. It's word salad used to cause people to feel guilty or ashamed when they shouldn't. Being forced to live inhumanely, meaning in unnatural, deteriorating conditions, is unacceptable. I will never accept that. No one should. If you are the only person on the entire planet who is suffering, what would you want the rest of the people around you to be focused on? A better question in 2024 is, who does not have some aspect of their life, of their beingness, that they do not wish, hope, pray that someone, somewhere would completely relieve them of? Should you accept pain and suffering simply because you are the only one, as if no one should have the responsibility or burden of completely relieving you so that you are able to live as everyone else does? What kind of people would expect you to do that? There isn't a single day that passes that I do not make an effort to rest in peace. In 5 years, I have found that even if I am able to find a suitable level of rest or peace, because I have been unable to achieve both states of being at the same time, there's always someone doing something to disrupt that. If I decide, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to suffer this. Inevitably, this inactivity becomes a problem and more suffering one way or another is forced upon me until I am so saturated in it that I must decide that I must do something or I will completely lose all functionality of whatever body part suffers ailment or relational state I'm enduring the pain of at any given time. There is nothing I can do or not do to circumvent these people. I must be actively suffering from something at all times. Why should anyone want to live this way? It's not living. What part of this should I be grateful for? Does it grieve anyone else to consider that someone else is in worse conditions or circumstances? Does anyone else consider the suffering of other people and think, well, I don't want either of us to suffer if they are also actively trying to overcome it and cannot achieve the rest and peace we all deserve as our birthright on this earth? I was watching a video yesterday of a man in a kitchen, probably his own, frying chicken. Someone was recording and he was clearly preparing enough to feed people other than himself. He was wearing hunting or fishing fatigues, but it was hard to know if these were clothes he wore for that function or if they were simply the clothes he had. The stove he was using was absolutely filthy, and I wondered if people have watched my videos and thought the same about my kitchen. Most of the photos and videos I see online are really nice dwellings that look new or newly renovated. The other videos are always an extreme display of poverty despite the nature of the content they make and distribute from these places. I've always wanted a newly renovated kitchen and home. My husband and I even planned for this back in 2018. We've made improvements when forced to maintain functional use of this place where we have lived since 1998, but the renovations never happened for the same reason I'm even writing this message right now. I have given up on trying to combat environmental contaminants while trying to manage the health effects of them at the same time both are actively occurring without ceasing. However, I would never allow my cooking space to become like the man frying chicken for himself and whomever else was waiting to eat. My thoughts, however, were not, I'm grateful I have a nicer place to prepare food for my family. I thought instead, I wonder where he lives and what the conditions are like there. This led to other kinds of thoughts and questions that were significant enough that I'm writing about it now, many hours later in the darkness of early morning. In reflection, I don't think this man has rest or peace, but he was enjoying what he was doing at the time. He was being recorded for social media. I'm certain he doesn't know I have thought about him and his family with concern while trying to deal with my own problems. People live in new or redeveloped homes that they feel comfortable in when they are not working to afford to live there and can actually rest. Constant cleaning and maintenance are necessary but are not resting. Neither is entertaining in ways that show off these homes. It's nice inside these homes, and I often admire people who have them and have decorated them for comfort and beauty. However, it's then impossible to leave the interior of these spaces to go into the community anywhere and not see conditions that are unacceptable, not only for their own sense of living comfort and cleanliness, but for everyone else as well. Can you rest in peace knowing that these contrasting conditions exist? Do you then ignore this because you already have enough to do and focus on? Is the expectation that someone else will deal with it at some point? Maybe you even make a complaint to someone who should be responsible for cleaning and maintenance. If you did, what has happened to those unsightly areas? I guess what I need to say with all of this is that I am tired. It's not a function of my being in my 50s because I was just as tired in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I was tired for different reasons then. Working, graduate school, raising children. There were many more days when I just wanted to sit quietly doing something I enjoyed peacefully than there were not. I kept going because I believed once I get this done, I can rest for a minute. Sometimes that was true. More often, as soon as I got settled, something or someone needed my attention and I couldn't ignore this. People use the analogy of a cow sometimes to explain this. She can't give milk until she has a calf. Then once the calf is weaned, there is still the expectation that she will continue to give milk indefinitely for everyone else. If you've never breastfed a baby, you may have no idea how unappealing this idea is, but it's a good analogy for those of us who have cared for our babies this way. Can you imagine being forced then to have a machine linked to this very sensitive area every day for hours and your kids are fully grown? To be expected to produce for the rest of your life, followed by death when you are still to be used to feed these people. Are they grateful for that? If they are, how do they demonstrate that for these animals? Again, I ask, when people say rest in peace, what is it they are saying exactly? What would that even look like? Because I've been trying to rest for years and I can't find a single consistent hour of peace no matter where I am or what I'm doing. Where is this state of beingness even possible? Because I would really like to move there permanently. Thanks for listening. In conclusion, I'd like to ask, how much should children be expected to pay their parents for using their skills to raise and care for them? What is the current payment rate for parental advice, support, and supervision? How much have you budgeted to pledge of your monthly love donation to cover these costs above your other living expenses? I'm asking for a friend.